Commander Reyes tore her eyes away from the static-filled screen and turned to her tactical officer. "Get me everything we have on the attack pattern. Energy signatures, weapon types, approach vectors, all of it." Lieutenant Cho's fingers danced across his console. "Data's fragmentary at best, Commander. The colony's defensive satellites captured only 37 seconds of usable footage before they were neutralized." "Show me what we have." The main view screen shifted to display a three-dimensional tactical plot. 7 vessels of unknown configuration approached Proxima Colony in a perfect heptagonal formation. Their energy signatures were off the charts, putting out more power than Earth's entire defense fleet combined. "Run it through the combat simulator," Reyes ordered. "Compare against known attack doctrines." The computer processed for several minutes before displaying its results. Reyes frowned at the readout. "That can't be right. Run it again." "Already did, Commander. 3 times. Cho looked up, his expression troubled. "These attack patterns don't match any known military doctrine in our database. They're too perfect, too mathematically precise, and too inefficient," Reyes muttered, pointing to the simulation. "Look here and here. They expended unnecessary energy maintaining formation when breaking apart would have increased their tactical advantage by 23%. And these targeting solutions, they're textbook optimal against static defenses, but against dynamic, unpredictable targets. They'd be vulnerable." Cho finished, understanding dawning on his face. Reyes nodded grimly. "Whoever these attackers are, they've never faced human military tactics before." The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was outgunned, outmatched technologically, but perhaps not outthought. Admiral Chen entered the room, his face drawn with fatigue after 20 straight hours in the Crisis Command Center. "Commander, your preliminary analysis." "Sir, we're dealing with an unknown species with technology far beyond ours, but there are exploitable weaknesses in their combat doctrine." Reyes transferred her findings to the Admiral's tablet. "They fight with mathematical precision, but seem to lack adaptability. Their formations never deviated even when our colony's defensive measures created opportunities for tactical advantage." Chen studied the data, his expression grave. "Your recommendations: immediate evacuation of all outer colonies, fortification of the Sol system, and..." Reyes hesitated. "Speak freely, Commander." "Sir, I recommend we begin developing unconventional warfare strategies immediately. If these beings rely on predictability and mathematical optimization, our best counter would be chaos theory applied to combat. Unpredictable patterns, seemingly irrational maneuvers, feints within feints." Chen's eyebrow raised slightly. "You want to fight a technologically superior enemy with tricks and deception. With respect, Admiral, that's how every successful insurgency in human history has overcome technological disadvantage." Before Chen could respond, Lieutenant Cho interrupted. "Commander, Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. Unknown origin, directed specifically to this conference room." The main screen flickered, displaying a being unlike anything Reyes had ever seen. Its form seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, with multiple appendages and sensory organs arranged in configurations that made her eyes hurt to focus on. "People of Earth," the being spoke, its voice oddly melodic despite the translator's mechanical overlay. "I am emissary Exectal of the Lintari Confederation. The beings who destroyed your colony are called the Vraxen. They have already consumed 17 civilizations across this spiral arm." The alien paused, its form rippling with what might have been emotion. "We have been watching your species. You fight differently than any we have encountered. The Vraxen cannot predict what they do not understand." The alien's form stabilized momentarily. "We offer an alliance. You have something they've never faced before. Minds that embrace chaos as a strategy." As the implications of first contact mixed with the horror of Proxima's destruction, Reyes met the alien's gaze steadily. Tell us everything you know about the Vraxen. Neutral Station 7 hung in the void between star systems, its gleaming hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside the station's central chamber, Admiral John Way stood surrounded by the most diverse gathering of sentient species ever witnessed by human eyes. The air felt thick with tension and the mingled sense of 7 different physiologies. "Your simulation proves nothing," said Vexala, the crystalline Lintari delegate. Light refracted through her translucent form as she gestured dismissively at the holographic display. "A computer model cannot accurately represent actual combat conditions." Wei smiled thinly. "Perhaps a demonstration, then." He nodded to his aide, who activated a secured channel. "Commander Rise, you may proceed." On the massive view screen dominating the chamber wall, a live feed appeared showing 3 Earth corvettes approaching a derelict Vraxen scout ship, salvage from the Proxima attack. The alien delegates watched with varying expressions of skepticism as the human vessels began executing maneuvers that seemed entirely random. "What madness is this?" The Kulith observers' mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. They appear to be operating independently without central coordination. "They are coordinated," Wei explained, "just not in ways your military doctrines would recognize. Each commander has mission parameters and objectives, but complete tactical freedom within those boundaries." The Dothe Elder, a being resembling a massive jellyfish suspended in an anti-gravity field, pulsed with blue bioluminescence. Such individualistic command structure invites chaos and failure. "It invites adaptation," Wei countered. On the screen, the Earth vessels suddenly changed their seemingly random patterns, converging on the Vraxen vessel from 3 unexpected vectors. "Your ships are now in range of the Vraxen automated defense systems," noted Tipran, the reptilian Sorok military attaché. "Even disabled, that vessel's point defenses will." The defense systems on the derelict activated, targeting solutions appearing as glowing red lines on the tactical overlay. But the human vessels were no longer where the targeting systems predicted. The Vraxen defenses fired into empty space as the corvettes executed maneuvers that defied prediction algorithms. Silence fell over the chamber as the observers processed what they were seeing. "Impossible," whispered Vexala. "The Vraxen defensive matrices are based on perfect mathematical models. They have decimated our most precisely coordinated fleet actions." "Perfect mathematical models," Wei agreed, "that assume rational actors following optimal paths. Humans rarely do either." The Dothe Elder's translucent body darkened thoughtfully. "You deliberately introduce inefficiency and suboptimal action as strategy. We call it unpredictability," Wei said. "Sometimes the fastest route between 2 points isn't the best if everyone expects you to take it." On the screen, the Earth corvettes had neutralized the Vraxen vessel's defenses without taking a single hit. Commander Reyes appeared in a small window on the display. "Demonstration complete, Admiral. 0 casualties, all objectives achieved." The alien delegates exchanged glances, their body language speaking volumes across species barriers. The Kulith observer's antennae quivered slightly. The Vraxen hive mind optimizes for perfect coordination and efficiency. It cannot comprehend deliberately inefficient action. "Precisely," said Wei. "Their perfect unity is a weakness against an enemy whose strength lies in controlled chaos." Vexala stepped forward, her crystalline form catching the light. "If we agree to this alliance, how do you propose we integrate such human tactics with our forces? Our species have spent millennia perfecting mathematical precision in warfare." Wade nodded to his aide, who distributed data tablets to each delegate. "We don't ask you to fight like humans. We ask you to let humans create strategic uncertainty that your forces can exploit." He activated a holographic display showing a complex battle plan. "Your precision, our unpredictability. Together, we create something the Vraxen cannot calculate." The Dothe Elder pulsed with considering lights. "Perhaps primitiveness does have its advantages." Lieutenant Colonel Maya Okafer's magnetic boots made rhythmic thumps against the twisted hull fragment as she picked her way through the debris field. What remained of the Vraxin supply depot scattered across 50 kilometers of space, a testament to the battle that had concluded mere hours ago. Through her helmet visor, she watched Coalition salvage teams cataloging the wreckage, their ships' running lights creating a dance of colors against the darkness. "Colonel, you should return to the command vessel," came the voice of her XO, Captain Singh, through the comm. "Exposure limits in this radiation field." 10 more minutes, Okafor replied, her attention fixed on a half-destroyed Vraxin command node floating ahead. "There's something I need to see firsthand." She propelled herself forward with a gentle push, activating her suit's scanner as she approached the alien technology. The node's internal architecture was exposed, revealing crystalline computing structures unlike anything human engineers had designed. Okafor interfaced her suit's systems with the damaged console, artificial intelligence translators working to decode the alien data formats. "Jackpot," she whispered as information flowed to her heads-up display. The data confirmed what she had suspected during the battle. When her forces had broken from the carefully calculated attack vectors and executed her seemingly random tactical shifts, the Vraxin response had been delayed by 3.7 seconds, an eternity in space combat. The command logs showed the enemy battle computers cycling through thousands of response scenarios, attempting to identify a pattern that simply wasn't there. A shadow fell across the console as a coalition ship maneuvered overhead. Okafor looked up to see the distinctive silhouette of a Kulith diplomatic vessel. Moments later, Admiral Tilana appeared beside her, the insectoid alien's environmental suit customized to accommodate multiple limbs and sensory appendages. "Your presence here surprises me, Colonel," Tilana's translator rendered in Okafor's earpiece. "Most commanders observe from the safety of their vessels." "Humans learn differently," Okafor replied, gesturing to the console. "We need to touch, to see up close. It's how we build intuition." Tilana's compound eyes reflected starlight in faceted patterns. "Intuition, a concept my species finds challenging. We rely on calculated probability and pattern recognition. And the Vraxin exploited that predictability for centuries," Okafor noted. She transferred the data from the console to a shared channel. "Look at these response logs. When faced with unpredictable human maneuvers, their battle computers experienced decision paralysis." The Admiral studied the data, antennae twitching, and what Okafor had learned was an expression of surprise. "Their tactical systems require pattern recognition to formulate responses. Your forces provided no discernible pattern." "We provided constantly shifting micro-patterns," Okafor corrected, "like water changing course around obstacles, flowing, adapting, never following the same path twice." Tilana was silent for a long moment, compound eyes fixed on the drifting debris around them. "Your species fights like water," the Admiral finally said. "The Vraxin cannot calculate water." Okafor smiled behind her visor. "Then let's become a flood." She pushed away from the console, gesturing toward her shuttle. "Join me, Admiral. I need to present my findings to the Coalition Command. If we're going to replicate this victory on a larger scale, we need to rethink the entire Coalition battle doctrine." As they made their way back, Tilana's translator conveyed an observation. "The Coalition species have spent millennia fighting according to mathematical principles. You ask us to embrace calculated disorder." "Not disorder," Okafor replied. "Controlled chaos. In human history, the most successful military leaders weren't those who followed textbook strategies, but those who surprised their enemies, who did what convention said was irrational." The shuttle bay of Okafor's command vessel came into view, its lights welcoming through the darkness of space. "My tactical officers report that implementing your battle plan felt like intentionally making mistakes," Tilana said. "Yet it resulted in our greatest victory against the Vraxin. 12% casualties instead of 70. Okafor removed her helmet as they entered the pressurized bay. "Sometimes winning requires unlearning what we believe to be true." She turned to face the alien Admiral. "The Vraxin expect us to fight logically. Our advantage lies in being beautifully, terrifyingly illogical." Dr. Aisha Mensah rubbed her burning eyes as she studied the three-dimensional model of Vraxen neural architecture floating above her workstation. 18 hours without sleep had left her running on stimulants and determination, but the breakthrough was worth every moment of exhaustion. "Amazing," she whispered, manipulating the hologram to highlight specific neural structures. "Their entire nervous system is quantum entangled." The laboratory door hissed open as Admiral Wei entered, accompanied by representatives from 3 coalition species. The Admiral took one look at Mensa's haggard appearance and placed a steaming cup of coffee on her desk. "You called an emergency meeting," Wei said. "I assume this is significant." Mensa nodded gratefully at the coffee. "It changes everything we thought we knew about the Vraxen." She expanded the holographic display, filling the center of the laboratory with a glowing network of interconnected nodes. "This is a map of Vraxen consciousness across their empire, reconstructed from the biological samples we recovered from the supply depot." The Linteri scientist, Vexala, moved closer to the display, her crystalline form refracting light through the hologram. "These connection patterns are unlike anything in our xenobiological database, because they're not simply biological," Mensa explained. "The Vraxen maintain individuality at a basic level, but their higher cognitive functions are networked through quantum entanglement nodes." She highlighted 3 massive clusters in the network. These 3 alpha nodes serve as central processors, coordinating the entire species across vast distances without communication lag. Admiral Wei immediately grasped the implications. That's how they coordinate so perfectly across light years without communication delay. Their entire species functions as a single distributed intelligence. "Precisely," Mensa confirmed. "When a Vraxen commander makes a decision in one star system, that decision is instantaneously shared with every other Vraxen, regardless of distance." The Dotha representative pulsed with troubled bioluminescence. Such perfect unity would be a tremendous evolutionary advantage. "It also explains why they're so vulnerable to unpredictable tactics," Mensa continued. "Their perfect unity has left them without concept of deception or surprise. Why would any part of yourself hide information from another part?" She manipulated the display, showing neural activity patterns. "Their tactical responses show no evidence of contingency planning or deceptive strategies. Their battle computers execute optimal responses to recognize patterns, but when faced with something truly novel, they experience processing delays while attempting to reach consensus." Wei finished. 3.7 seconds. Mensa confirmed. Colonel O'Keeffer's battle data was invaluable in confirming this. The Kulith military attache's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "If their consciousness is distributed this way, could we exploit it as a weakness?" Before Mensa could answer, emergency alarms blared throughout the station. The holographic display automatically shifted to tactical mode, showing a massive Vraxen fleet formation dropping out of faster-than-light travel near Saturn. "Tactical analysis," we demanded as the group moved swiftly toward the command center. 117 capital ships, over 500 support vessels, reported the tactical officer. "Configuration matches historical records of Fleet Master Corax, the Inevitable's armada. Sir, no Vraxen commander has ever deployed a force this size outside their home systems." Mensa stared at the tactical display, her mind racing. "They're adapting to us," she said quietly. "The hive mind is evolving its strategies." The tactical officer's voice wavered slightly. "Admiral, they're broadcasting on all frequencies, text and audio, in perfect English." The message appeared on the main screen, chilling in its simplicity. "We are Corax. We have studied your chaos. We have calculated its patterns. Surrender or be extinguished." Wei's expression remained impassive as he studied the tactical display. "Dr. Mensa, I need options for targeting those alpha nodes. Everything you have on the hive mind structure." "Sir," Mensa said hesitantly, "disrupting the alpha nodes would effectively lobotomize their entire species. I'm aware of the ethical implications, Doctor." Wei's voice was steady. "But with Saturn's colonies in the balance, I need every option on the table." As they entered the command center, the displays showed the first Vraxan ships engaging the outnumbered coalition defenders around Saturn's moons. The battle for humanity's future had begun. Captain Reyes stood motionless before the observation deck's massive viewport, her silhouette stark against the distant flashes of energy weapons and nuclear detonations. The battle for Saturn unfolded across millions of kilometers, yet even at this distance, the coalition fleet's desperate situation was clear. Corax's forces had adapted to their unpredictable tactics with overwhelming numbers and firepower. Behind her, voices rose in heated debate as the Coalition Ethics Council argued over Admiral Wei's proposed strike against the Vraxan hive mind nodes. This would constitute xenocide, insisted the Linteri representative, Vexala. We would become the very monsters we're fighting. Admiral Wei's voice remained calm but resolute. The alternative is the extinction of multiple sentient species, including humanity. The Vraxan have shown no interest in coexistence. Even so, countered the Dothe Elder, to destroy their collective consciousness would condemn trillions of individuals to a state of moral collapse. Reyes turned from the viewport, the gravity of Saturn visible over her shoulder. The tactical display showed coalition forces losing ground by the minute. Defensive lines around Titan and Enceladus had already collapsed. The remaining ships fought with desperate valor, but the outcome was becoming inevitable. "If I may speak," she said, her quiet voice somehow cutting through the debate. All eyes turned to her as she approached the central table and placed her tablet on the surface. "I found a third option." The display embedded in the table activated, showing a modified plan based on Dr. Mensa's research. "We target only the alpha connection nodes, breaking their unity without destroying their individual consciousness." Dr. Mensa leaned forward, studying the proposal. "Theoretically possible. This would disrupt the quantum entanglement fields without damaging the base neural architecture of individual Vraxan. Instead of lobotomizing their species," Rice continued, "we'd be severing their forced neural connection. Each Vraxan would retain their individual intelligence and memories, but would no longer be part of the collective." The room fell silent as the implications settled over the gathered representatives. "You're proposing to liberate them," said the Quillith observer after a moment. Reyes nodded. Dr. Mensa's research suggests the hive mind structure was artificially imposed on their species at some point in their evolution. This isn't natural to them. It's a form of enslavement. Admiral Wei studied the tactical requirements of the plan. This would require simultaneous strikes on all 3 Alpha Node planets deep in Vraxan territory. "We have no ships that could penetrate their defenses undetected." "We have 7, Rice countered, calling up specifications for a new class of vessel. The Shadowdancer stealth ships, equipped with experimental phase shift technology derived from Linteri science and human adaptive materials. The Linteri representative's crystalline form flickered with surprise. "Those vessels are still theoretical. The phase shift drives haven't completed testing." "They've completed enough," Rice said firmly. "I selected crews for all 7 ships. We can deploy within 12 hours. Admiral Wei's expression darkened. "The mission survival probability." Rice met his gaze without flinching. 12%. At best. The council fell silent, understanding what she was proposing. "You're volunteering for a suicide mission," said the Dothe Elder, pulses of concerned blue light rippling through its translucent form. "I'm volunteering for a mission with acceptable risks given the stakes," Rice corrected. She zoomed in on the tactical display showing Saturn's civilian centers. "There are 8 million colonists on Titan alone. The calculus is simple." We studied her for a long moment. "You understand that with the phase shift technology, there will be no communications between the 3 strike teams. Each team will have to execute their portion of the mission with perfect timing, without knowing if the others have succeeded or failed." "Yes, sir," Rice replied. "We've developed a precise chronometric synchronization protocol. If we succeed, the Vraxan hive mind will collapse simultaneously across all their territory. And if you fail, asked Vexala. Reyes glanced back at the viewport, where another Coalition cruiser disappeared in a flash of light. Then at least we tried an option that lets us keep our humanity while fighting for it. The room fell silent as the council members exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Wei nodded. "Prepare your teams, Captain. You deploy in 6 hours, not 12. We don't have the luxury of time anymore." As Reyes left to prepare her mission, she caught a final glimpse of Saturn's rings through the viewport, a reminder of all that hung in the balance. Colonel Reyes felt the slight shudder as the shadow dancer emerged from faster-than-light travel, the experimental phase shift drive powering down with a descending hum. Through the viewport, the red dwarf star bathed the command deck in crimson light, silhouetting the crystalline megastructure that orbited it. Alpha Node 1. "Stealth systems at maximum," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her voice barely above a whisper despite the fact that sound couldn't travel in space. No indication of detection. Beside the shadow dancer, its sister ship Quietus shimmered into normal space, its adaptive hull already beginning to mimic the background radiation patterns of the system. The tactical display showed empty space where 5 other dots should have been. "Status of the other teams?" Reyes asked, already knowing the answer. "No contact since deployment, Colonel," Jackson replied. "As expected with the phase shift interference." Reyes nodded grimly. The Ashkari defense grid. Active, but not alerted. 5 patrol vessels on standard routes. The tactical officer highlighted their positions. "We have a narrow approach vector between sensor overlaps. 1 shot at insertion. Prepare the drop pods. 20 minutes to deployment." As her team made final preparations, Reyes studied the schematics of Alpha Node 1. The massive structure housed the quantum processors that helped coordinate Vraxan consciousness across 1/3 of their territory. According to Dr. Mensa's calculations, simultaneous disruption of all 3 nodes would collapse the entire entanglement network without causing permanent neural damage to individual Vraxan. If the other teams made it. If they all hit their targets within the same 30-second window. If the disruption devices functioned as designed. Too many ifs. "Colonel," Jackson called softly from her station. "Coalition main forces have engaged Corax's fleet. 83% of our ships have been destroyed or disabled." Reyes swallowed hard, but kept her expression neutral for her crew's sake. "Then we better not miss." The insertion went more smoothly than expected. The Shadow Dancer's stealth systems proved effective against even the advanced Vraxan sensors, allowing them to deploy drop pods undetected. Reyes led the first team of 8 operatives, their specialized combat suits designed to disrupt Vraxan sensory systems. They breached the outer hull through a maintenance port, encountering minimal resistance in the early stages. The node facility was primarily automated, with few Vraxan physically present. Those they did encounter were dispatched quickly and silently, their neural interfaces disrupted by targeted electromagnetic pulses before they could alert the hive mind. 47 minutes to synchronization point, Reyes noted as they reached the central access corridor. "We're ahead of schedule." The ease of their progress worried her. Either the Vraxan considered this facility too secure to need heavy defenses, or they were walking into a trap. Her question was answered as they approached the central chamber. Automated defense systems activated, filling the corridor with pulse fire. 2 of her team fell immediately. "Cover formation Delta," Reyes ordered, deploying a portable shield generator. "Yusuf, the bypass codes." Lieutenant Yusuf plugged a quantum decryptor into the door console, his fingers flying across the interface. "Working on it, Colonel. Their systems are adapting to our algorithms." "Make it work," Reyes said through gritted teeth as she returned fire. "We have 18 minutes to plant that device and clear the blast radius." After what felt like hours, but was mere minutes, the massive doors slid open. Reyes led the remaining team members into the central chamber and stopped short. The room was vast, at least 100 meters across, with a pulsing crystalline structure at its center. Streams of data flowed through translucent conduits, feeding into the massive quantum processor. But it was the figure standing before the processor that froze her blood. A Vraxan commander, at least 3 meters tall, its exoskeleton gleaming with embedded technology. Unlike other Vraxan they'd encountered, this one's eyes held awareness, intelligence beyond the drone-like state of the others. Impossible, it stated flatly, its translator rendering perfect English. Your species cannot coordinate this precisely without a hive mind. Reyes leveled her weapon as her team spread out, 2 members already moving to plant the disruption device while the commander was distracted. We don't need a hive mind, she replied, smiling through blood-streaked teeth from an earlier injury. We have trust. The Vraxan commander tilted its massive head. Trust, an inefficient substitute for perfect coordination. Maybe, Rice conceded, but it gives us something you lack, the freedom to surprise even ourselves. As she spoke, the disruption device activated behind the commander. A low hum filled the chamber as the countdown began. The commander's eyes widened in what might have been the first expression of genuine surprise ever experienced by a Vraxan. What have you done? Admiral Wade gripped the edge of the tactical console as the Coalition flagship Determination shuddered under another impact. A hull breach alarm sounded from Deck 17, quickly silenced as damage control teams responded. The main view screen showed the supposedly doomed Coalition forces preparing for their final stand against Corax's overwhelming armada. Reroute power from non-essential systems to forward shields. Way ordered. Concentrate fire on their command vessel. The weapons officer shook her head. Sir, their defenses are adapting to our targeting patterns faster than we can change them. Colonel O'Keffer's chaos protocols are no longer effective. Wade nodded grimly. Corax had indeed studied their chaos and calculated its patterns, just as promised. The unpredictability that had given them an edge in earlier encounters had been analyzed and countered by the Vraxan hive mind. How long until the synchronization point? He asked quietly. 7 minutes, sir, replied his aide. If Colonel Rice's team succeeded. Wade left the sentence unfinished. There was no way to know if any of the stealth teams had reached their targets. The phase shift technology that enabled their infiltration also cut off all communication. Either all 3 teams would succeed in perfect coordination, or humanity's last gambit would fail. Suddenly, the tactical officer straightened in her chair. Sir, the Vraxan fleet. They're breaking formation. All eyes turned to the main display. The perfect geometric arrangement of enemy vessels was dissolving into chaos as ships began moving independently, some firing on each other, others simply drifting. They did it. Y whispered. She actually did it. The disruption of the alpha nodes had worked exactly as Dr. Mensa predicted. Without the quantum entanglement network coordinating their actions, individual Vraxan vessels were acting autonomously, some confused, some panicked, others seemingly trying to re-establish communication. All vessels, this is Admiral Way, he broadcast to the Coalition fleet. Target Corax's flagship immediately. Full offensive press. The remaining Coalition ships surged forward, exploiting the sudden disorder in the Vraxan ranks. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated moments ago now moved erratically or failed to respond at all. Y watched as Corax's massive command vessel attempted to rally nearby forces, but without the hive mind connection, the legendary commander's orders reached only those within conventional communication range. Sir, called the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from a Vraxan cruiser. They're requesting asylum. Way exchanged a surprised glance with Dr. Mensa, who had joined him on the bridge. Put it through, he ordered. The view screen shifted to show a Vraxan officer, its posture noticeably different from any they had encountered before. Where previous Vraxan had moved with machine-like precision, this one's movements seemed almost hesitant, individual. Coalition vessel, the Vraxan began, its translator rendering the words with unusual inflection. I am Sub-Commander Vexcar of the cruiser Righteous Purpose. I'd request immediate cessation of hostilities and protected status. Why should we trust you? Way asked, studying the alien carefully. The Vraxen's compound eyes dimmed slightly. Because I am no longer bound to the collective will. For the first time in my existence, I can speak as myself. It paused, seeming to struggle with the concept. Many of us wish no further conflict. The compulsion is gone. Dr. Mensah stepped forward. The Alpha Node disruption didn't just break their communication. It freed them from forced consensus. Hours later, as coalition forces secured their improbable victory, Y met with the Vraxen commander in a heavily guarded conference room. Dr. Mensah and several coalition representatives joined them, all still processing the sudden shift in the war. Corax's flagship escaped with approximately 20% of the fleet, Y noted. Our sensors indicate they're regrouping at coordinates near their homeworld. They will attempt to re-establish the collective through the backup nodes, Vexcar explained. Those still loyal to the hive mind concept. But many others like myself, we remember what it was to be individuals before the compulsion. Not all Vraxen wish to return to unity. Dr. Mensah leaned forward. You mentioned the compulsion. Was the hive mind artificially imposed on your species? The Vraxen's expression was difficult to read, but its voice carried what might have been sorrow. Yes, 3,000 of your years ago. To prepare us. Prepare you for what? Wei asked. The harvesters, Vexcar replied, the translator rendering the word with ominous finality. The ancient machines that pruned galactic civilization every 50,000 years. We expanded aggressively to prepare for their arrival. A chill settled over the room as the implications became clear. The coalition had been fighting merely the vanguard of a much greater threat. When? Dr. Mensah asked quietly. The Vraxen commander's compound eyes dimmed. 5 of your Earth years, perhaps less. The space elevator rising from Mount Kilimanjaro gleamed in the African sunlight, its carbon nanotube cable stretching beyond the atmosphere to the orbital shipyards. General Maya Okafor, promoted after the Battle of Saturn, watched through the shuttle viewport as Earth receded below, the blue-green planet now surrounded by the most impressive defensive array the galaxy had ever seen. 3 years of frantic preparation had transformed humanity's home system into a fortress. Ships designed by dozens of species were constructed according to human-inspired battle doctrines, mixing the mathematical precision of alien technology with the unpredictable adaptability that had become humanity's signature contribution to warfare. Quite a view, remarked Admiral Wei, seated across from her. Sometimes I forget how far we've come in such a short time. Okafor nodded. From fighting alone to leading the largest alliance in known history, all because we think differently. Because we prepare differently, Wei corrected. Even Colonel Rice's stealth mission succeeded because humans rehearse impossible scenarios. The mention of Rice brought a moment of respectful silence. Her sacrifice at Alpha Node 1 had become legendary, though few knew she had actually survived, rescued by coalition forces days after the battle. Now a general herself, Rice commanded the vanguard fleet that would serve as the first line of defense against the harvesters. The shuttle docked with Geneva Station, the massive habitat serving as coalition headquarters. Representatives from 37 species, including the Free Vraxen, coordinated the unprecedented defensive effort from its command center buried deep within the structure. As they entered the central chamber, Okafor noted the tense atmosphere. Tactical displays showed the first Harvester scout ships crossing the Oort cloud, their configurations unlike anything in coalition records. Status report, Wei requested as they joined the gathered commanders. General Reyes stepped forward, the scars on her face a permanent reminder of her mission to Alpha Node 1. Vanguard fleet is deployed at the designated intercept coordinates. The layered defense grid is online and awaiting activation. The harvester vessels show no response to communication attempts, added the Linturi High Commander, her crystalline form shifting with anxiety. They follow the same approach pattern as recorded in our historical archives. My ancestors fought them 17 cycles ago, she continued softly. They followed precise mathematical formulas for optimal defense. They were exterminated in 6 days. Wade nodded gravely. The harvesters expect patterns they've seen for millions of years. but they've never encountered humans before. He activated the main holographic display, showing the comprehensive battle plan, an organized chaos of layered defenses, hidden reserves, and trap strategies that no algorithm could predict. Every species here evolved to avoid dangers they knew. White continued, addressing the assembled commanders. Humans are unique. We've spent our entire history imagining dangers that don't yet exist and preparing for them anyway. A Vraxan commander, now freed from the hive mind, studied the battle plan with compound eyes. Your species seems almost designed to counter the harvesters. While we created perfect unity, you embraced perfect adaptation. We aren't perfect, Rice corrected. We're just really good at being imperfect in useful ways. Dr. Mensa joined them, carrying data from her research team. The Harvester Vanguard will reach Neptune's orbit in 48 hours. Their main fleet follows 20 hours behind. Okafor studied the projected invasion path. They're following exactly the route we predicted. Because they've never needed to deviate, Wei observed. Until now. As the first harvester signals appeared on the long-range sensors, Ray stepped forward to address the coalition forces waiting throughout the solar system. Her voice carried to millions of beings across thousands of ships. For millennia, the harvesters have encountered civilizations fighting desperately for survival, following patterns they knew. Today, they face something different. They face a civilization that has spent its entire existence rehearsing for this moment. She paused, looking around at the diverse gathering of species now united under human leadership. We humans have always been haunted by imagined catastrophes. We've written countless stories about the end of civilization, planned for disasters that never came, built shelters for apocalypses that never happened. Today, all those nightmares we prepared for have finally found their purpose. Wade nodded to the tactical officers. Initiate Chaos Protocol Alpha. All ships, prepare to engage. As the coalition forces moved into their seemingly random starting positions, Okafor couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its greatest weakness, the ability to foresee and fear the worst. Now, facing an enemy that had culled civilizations for millions of years, that uniquely human anxiety had become the galaxy's salvation. The harvesters were about to discover what happened when you attacked a species that had been rehearsing for doomsday since it learned to tell stories around campfires. They were about to learn what it meant to face the prepared.